One of the most common reasons that vegans think that it's morally wrong to use animal products is because they sympathize with the animals. In this video, I'm going to talk about why we sympathize with animals. I'm going to talk about why we feel sympathy at all, and how the origin of this emotion can help us explain why we feel the way we feel about different life forms. So, why do we feel sympathy for animals? What is the purpose of this emotion? Well, to understand why we sympathize with animals, we need to understand where our emotions come from. Our emotions are the result of millions of years of evolution, where the qualities that have improved our ability to survive and replicate have been naturally selected. So, from an evolutionary perspective, the purpose of our emotions is to give rise to behaviors that help us live longer and reproduce. Now, different emotions encourage different behaviors. When we are hungry, we eat. When we are tired, we sleep. When we are horny, we have sex. Now, all of these behaviors improve our ability to survive and replicate. So the emotions that give rise to these behaviors have a clear evolutionary benefit. Now, what is the evolutionary benefit of feeling sympathy? What behavior does sympathy give rise to? And how does it help us survive and replicate? The evolutionary benefit of sympathizing with other people is quite clear. Because human beings are social animals. Working together helps us survive and replicate. And in a social context, sympathizing with other people helps us collaborate more effectively. So, by helping us collaborate more effectively, sympathizing with other people helps us survive and replicate. However, we don't really work together with other animals. So what is the benefit of sympathizing with them? The way I see it, we sympathize with animals because they are similar to us. You see, when we sympathize with other people, we do this by relating to the experience of another person. We put ourselves in their shoes and try to imagine what it's like to experience whatever they're experiencing. We relate to the experience. And we can do this because they are similar to us. And we assume that because they're similar to us, they have a similar understanding and perception of the world. Now, because animals have a lot of similar characteristics to human beings, we can relate to them too. For example, if we see a cow with an open wound, we can feel bad for it, because we can relate to the experience of having an open wound and being in pain. And just like we would be in pain with an open wound, we assume that the cow is also suffering. And this way, we can relate to the experience of the cow simply because it has similar characteristics to us. Now, although we can relate to other animals, we don't sympathize with them equally. We don't feel as much sympathy for all life forms. For example, most of us feel much more sympathy for a cow than we do for an insect. And that is because the cow is much more similar to us, and so we can relate to its experience to a greater degree. The more similar an animal is to us, the more we can relate to its experience. And the more we can relate to the experience of an animal, the more we can sympathize with it. And this gives us a spectrum. On the one end of the spectrum, we have life forms that are so different from us that we can't even begin to relate to their experience. On the other end of the spectrum, we have human beings. So, the more similar an animal is to us, the closer it is to us on this spectrum. And the closer it is to us on the spectrum, the more we are able to relate to it. And the more we are able to relate to it, the more we can sympathize with them. This is what I call the sympathy spectrum. We sympathize with different life forms based on how much we can relate to them, which in turn depends on how similar they are to us. Now, this is just my perspective. If it makes sense to you, then feel free to incorporate it into your own perspective. And if it does not, then you're more than welcome to point out to me what you don't agree with. Which are the assumptions that you don't share with me? Either way, I encourage you to engage in this discussion so that we can develop an understanding of the world together. So until next time, always be thinking.